Thank
All right,
you for your support.
the next item on our agenda is the technology plan, and yes, that is Mike Connors with the suit on, and Kristen.
Well, we had, in order to, Mike and Kristen, why don't you pull up a chair to the front? And I'll do the introduction. Mike, Kristen, and myself will be presenting on this. I'm going to turn a majority of it over to Mike and Kristen. But when I started at District 208, we recognized, I introduced to the board a need to continue to look at technology. And that was something that Mike had identified with me in my first 3 months on the job when I was doing my getting to know you interviews and continue start stops with each department. That during those tough budget times when we were running significant deficits, that basically our technology department was given just enough in the budget to maintain the machines and the technology that we had in the building at the time, with no future planning. So Mike and I started to look at future planning last year, or early in my first year, which is how we got to go wireless with some of our I think they're the G wireless modems throughout the building, access points, and those were out of date, but we were able to get them for almost $3,000 and make the whole building wireless, which is something we never had, knowing that it was probably going to be too small and too slow, but it was still a point of moving in the right direction. And then we slowly budgeted each year to start doing an agent obsolescence plan for our desktops and computer labs. And then that's expanded into this technology plan, which is also a district goal. This past year, Alicia Dool had to resign as she went to go teach overseas in a teaching abroad program. And Kristen Smetana has stepped up in that role and done an amazing job with Mike and with Dave Fisher. And tonight we're going to present to the board a 3-year technology plan that will address infrastructure, capital equipment, professional development, and an end goal of eventually getting to a one-to-one initiative with our student body. That being said, we have 3 primary feeder districts, 94, 95, and 96. 94 is the North Riverside feeder district. I meet closely with the feeder soups, and Mr. Polici said that they are looking into aggressively the possibility of going to a one-to-one initiative. District 96 is already in a one-to-one initiative, and District 95 was uncertain when we met over the summer, but technologies, it's everywhere around us. The board has made a commitment to technology. We had that in our technology plan of moving the board to online documents and eliminating the paper, and we've done that, and the board's adapted to that nicely. So the work these guys have done, I pulled them in the other day and gave them all a high five. I don't do that often, but when I do, they were kind of shocked because I called all 3 of them to the office. But over the weekend when I was reflecting after we went through a rough presentation of this, and I realized the hard work and the commitment and the way that they're getting teachers excited, and now the leadership council's on all Chromebooks and they're all paperless. They're recruiting teachers to go on site visits of schools that are already doing one-to-one initiatives. They're following blogs and Twitter accounts of technology directors at various high schools and districts that are doing one-to-one initiatives. So the research, the development, the critical thinking, it's there. And great job, and I'll let you guys take it from there.
Okay.
Enthusiasm, don't mind it.
Okay.
Can you pull up the summary of the 3-year tech plan, please?
This,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And we put together this plan. We did it with a couple of assumptions and some information that we had gotten from about 6 site visits that we went to last year. We visited Berwyn, Niles, Leiden, New Trier, Kenilworth, and Hauser. So when we went there, from my end, what I wanted to see was, especially on the infrastructure side, is, okay, how did you support this? What do you use for, who's your providers, who your access points? Do you use Comcast, do you use AT&T, things like that. So after getting that information and kind of studying what we have here, what was our next logical steps over the next few years to get us to a place where one day we could do this, a similar thing. So if you look at the first year, 2013 and 2014, Currently, we've started some of these items or have completed some of them. The wireless access points, just last week, that was completed. And that's where we had swapped out the old access points that Dr. Skinkis had just mentioned with newer access points that give us the ability to have a faster speed and able to handle more devices connected to them. Also, what we were in the process of doing right now is upgrading our bandwidth. One thing, no matter what we do, we can always count on two things, is that you're going to need more bandwidth. It's insatiable. More programs now than ever are run completely off the web. We're in the process of either looking at or moving our own programs from what we have housed here to on the internet. Another thing is that you're going to have more and more mobile devices on our network. When we first implemented our wireless a couple years ago, we went from 650 basically stationary devices on our network to about almost 1,500, which it was quite a surprise to myself. I never expected that amount, but you know, people bring stuff from home. The teachers started bringing their own equipment and things like that. So we had to start handling that and start planning to expand that, and I think that will only continue to grow. So the third point, the other option is to implement an internet bandwidth backup system. Currently, we have one in place, but as our needs grow, also the backup system will have to grow too, so that if one of our providers goes out, it'll switch over to our other provider, and they're not tied in together. We don't have everything in one company, so that we can switch over. With all this in place, we decided to pick a pilot device. So after looking at several options like iPads and Chromebooks and a couple other things, we decided to go with Chromebooks. And if you look into the packet, there's I have put something together, why Chromebooks. And when we started looking at the program into Chromebooks, one of the things that really stood out was for the price, under $300, not only do we get the device, we could get a case, and we were able to control these through our management console, which is the same console that is under for our email. So there's no additional software that had to be bought for it or anything, or any hardware devices or anything like that. The Chromebook integrates with Google applications, which right now we're really trying to get our teachers and staff and the people that work here to start using Google Apps as a primary way to communicate with students and staff. Another reason we chose the Chromebooks was because there's a lot of applications, especially education applications, and most of them are free. With Chromebooks, it's kind of similar to a Droid phone or an iPhone. To get the apps, you just go to a store, what they call a store, like the iPhone store, or the Droids, or the Google Play, and you install it. You can test it out. If you don't like it, you just easily uninstall it. There is no requirement for us, the IT staff, to have to install or remove it. The other reason is that it's easy to manage. The newest features and security updates are automatically installed on there. We don't have to gather equipment. We don't have to make arrangements with people to do these updates. They're automatically downloaded. The user's notified. The machine will restart, and there you go. You're running the latest software. As I mentioned earlier, everything can be managed from a single interface. We're not using one interface for certain products and another interface just to manage these Chromebooks. It's all integrated into the Google applications. No additional hardware is needed to manage these devices. We don't have to buy servers or software or the infrastructure required to install that stuff. It's all inclusive. Another thing that we liked about the Chromebooks, which I brought mine, as you can see, it has an integrated keyboard on there. It also has a trackpad or mouse. So it's a lot easier to create things on here than it would be some other devices that we looked at. And it's easy to research, create, edit projects and documents. Also, included on these devices, as you can see, you can easily plug into a projector or a TV. Also, it includes several different types of ports. It has a network port built in there, so if your wireless for some reason isn't working, you can just plug it in with a regular cable. It also included is an HDMI, which is another type of video output. Some of the newer TV sets and newer projectors have those. And it includes several USB ports on here so that you can plug in a USB cable if you have a document on there and load it right into your machine.
When Mike talks about creating, one of the things that we discovered was when we went to do a lot of site visits, K through 6, we're using more iPads for the interactive learning applications, and 7 through 12, we're using either more laptop versions, notebook versions, or these Chromebooks because those districts had also done their research and said, especially at the high school level, kids are going to be more into creating papers, writing, doing projects, and that's why they thought it was more important to have a keyboard, more of a laptop device compared to an iPad device where a kid would still have to go home and type on their home computer. It could kind of do two things in one.
So then on the implementation and research side, this year, as Kevin said, the administration and leadership has gone paperless, and it's really increased the use of Google Docs, which has not only made us more efficient, but it's allowed us to collaborate a lot more. For example, one thing we do at leadership now is anytime we have a building event, like a homeroom, we'll share out a Google form, and so department chairs can go on and provide feedback on their own time, and then when we come together at the meeting, we can look at the data as a whole and talk about what are the next steps and how can we improve this for next year. So the next step this year is to roll it out to teachers and have them apply for a Chromebook in a pilot program that we're calling the technology team. So we provided that document for you. If you could jump to that one. And so with the technology team, any teacher who applies and that is accepted into the program would receive a Chromebook, and they would obviously be expected to use the Chromebook on a regular basis and to explore some Google apps and websites, but they're also expected to play a very active role in the development, implementation, and analysis of the 3-year plan in regards to the implementation and research. So one of the ways that they could do that is by leading lunch and learns and other professional development for the rest of the staff at RB. We hope to have them all attend at least one site visit. So we already have 2 site visits set up this year to Leiden. We have 19 people going. And then we hope to go back to Niles this year, and then also Maine Township, and it's their first year pilot, or using Chromebooks in a one-to-one environment. And then the other thing that we would expect of them is to attend monthly meetings to provide feedback and help us to continue to plan the next steps in our 3-year plan. And so we shared that at the faculty meeting today, both in the morning and in the afternoon, and when I got back to my office at 4 o'clock, I shared it out, and there were already 5 or 6 teachers that had contacted me and were very excited, and one who's already filled out the, took my Word document, converted it to a Google Doc, filled out the application and shared it back, and was just so excited to be able to have a Chromebook on a regular basis. And then in addition to that, this year we plan to increase the professional development so that all teachers, hopefully next year, if not sooner, are ready to have a Chromebook and start using that in the daily creation of their lesson plans.
Depending how budget goes, we think we've built enough into the budget under technology that we should come pretty close to, with teacher participation, that if we had to provide a Chromebook for every teacher, we should be pretty close to being able to do that. We think for this to be a successful program and initiative that we need to spend a majority of this year and all of next year with the teachers, working with the teachers, having them work the kinks out, having them tell us what they need for it to be effective, so that by 2015-16, should we be able to roll this out for the students, all the speed bumps are hopefully eliminated, and there's no hitch in the classroom presentation or in the learning. So Mike and Kristen have done a nice job talking about breaking this down in chunks so that by second semester, we start looking at a learning management system and some of those things. I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm excited.
That's okay. And so the other part I wanted to talk about is that next year, in addition to having all teachers have a Chromebook to work at the kinks, we want some teachers to be able to apply for Chromebooks for their classroom on a course-wide basis, so that the teachers of that course can get together and collaborate and really discuss how are these Chromebooks helping students develop critical thinking skills and able to, you know, evaluate and synthesize all the information that's at their fingertips. So we'd hope to be able to do that on a small scale next year as well, so that if we were able to roll them out in 2015 and 16, that it would be very successful, and we've worked all those kinks out.
And as the program continues, we realize that we're going to have to put in more access points. We're going to have to bump up the broadband speed, things like that, make sure that our backup systems can handle it, like I mentioned earlier, but that those will also require upgrades. And once we put that in, once we get the infrastructure to where we want it, then we'll be ready to have the students on Chromebooks and continue to provide professional development for the teachers.
So how many teachers are you shooting for this year on Chromebook?
We won't know until, right now we have just the administration and leadership councils that are on them, which is about 20. Once the teachers start putting in the applications for the tech team, we'll know more of the number.
What do you target though? What would you consider a success? And don't say 90, but
Say at least 50%.
okay.
And at least every department represented too.
Okay. All right, any questions on the technology plan?
Yeah, I have a question.
Gary, it's $300 you get you.
District 96 is using Mac specifically, so what is the plan going to be to the crossover from a student who's comfortable using Mac technology over to Chrome and Google?
Well, the thing with Google Apps is it's really, it's hardware agnostic. You can run Google Apps on an iPad, you can run it on a Chromebook. Once you learn Google Apps, it doesn't matter what type of hardware that you've used before. So when you get familiar with that, you could go to a Windows computer in one of the labs. You could use a Chromebook. You could, if you have at home a Mac or an iPad, and you're still using the same interface.
Okay. Secondly, is there going to be a requirement? Is the expectation that you're expecting that everyone at home has internet access? Is that your concept there?
So we started to...
Especially with cloud-based storage.
Right. We started to research that this year. We implemented, for those of you that went through our residency process, there was a technology survey that every family that went through residency had to take, so that we can get an idea of how many people have a machine at home, access to the internet at home, and what kind of additional support we would need to provide to bridge that gap for the parents. Because Comcast does offer an initiative for at-need families that will help provide internet access.
And Google Apps can also be accessed offline. So while they were here, they would be able to make sure that all of their documents were uploaded correctly, so that they could then work on them at home, and then they could come back and update them.
Trusting students are very organized to do that. Remember to do that.
Well, they could also, if they were going to Burger King or
Right.
McDonald's or
And then
Starbucks.
what you're planning on having online printers available for them to print off documents, because there's still the mentality that they like to see what they route or whatever.
There's several options with the Chromebook. The way that we're currently doing it now is that the way that Chromebook printing works is that actually it allows us to assign printers to different people, and they can actually print from anywhere. You can print from home to the printers here. Now you can also use your own at home. You can set it up through there also. So
Are you anticipating having printer stations, and we'd have to spend some money on additional printers, are you thinking?
I think we're probably going to have to rethink how we do our printing right now.
Okay, so give me the whole view on security and content and privacy, and how you're going to control what content sitting in the cloud based off of was created off of our or hardware?
Well, while they're in the school, they will have to go through all these SIPA compliancy that's as far as getting to sites and things like that. As far as content that they would create, at this point, we would probably have to be reliant on the teachers to be able to see what they're working on.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, down the road here, we had a teacher who was, doing things on the internet, So how are you going to control that kind of stuff?
Well, right now, that's where our while they're inside the building, they have to go through our firewall settings, which are set to block any kind of inappropriate content.
Right, but they can be accessing content outside, putting it on the cloud, right?
They could be like copying stuff and
Yeah.
things like that on there. At this point, I don't really have an answer for you on that.
Some of the schools that we have visited use a teacher dashboard called Hapara, and that gives them the option of, as the students are all working on their Chromebooks, to see what the students are working on, and if they see something that a student's not supposed to be working on, they can send them a message, or I believe they can even kick them off of that website. So that would be something that we could look into for that as well.
Mike, we have on here, under our 3-year plan, the infrastructure with the servers, networks. We need to make sure that we have a security section under the infrastructure, so there is a 3-year plan, so that we research and develop that, because I think these are some good questions that we
Yeah.
need to.
Any other questions?
I'm done.
Having bet wrong on technology over the past 30 years, in essence, that's what we're doing with respect to longevity, adaptability, trying to come up with the right formula so that we spend our money wisely. What convinces you that Chromebooks, as opposed to the many other options out there, is the way to where to put our money, especially when we're talking about a process that is years in the implementation?
When we've gone to visit other schools in the area, we've kind of looked at what they've done and we've tried to learn from their mistakes.
Mhm.
And we've asked them specifically, what would you do differently? Was there any equipment that you would use and things like that? What we've seen is a lot of schools that have also investigated other options, and they've gone to the Chromebooks. And we've had, one school in particular, they had basically like a netbook, which is basically a underpowered PC laptop, and they decided to go to Chromebook after investigating it. With all the value that you get not only from the cost of the Chromebook, but the integration with Google, which we are trying to integrate here a lot. It seems, obviously with technology there is no safe bet and things could change, but I think that when we've gone and looked at other places and seen what they've done and what we're doing right now, that it fits in.
What about the districts that are way ahead of us, that have been doing this for 7, 8 years? Are they using Chromebook?
The Chromebooks are relatively new, probably about 3 years old,
Okay.
so we don't have that many. A lot of schools are just starting it within the last year or two. But the ones that, we had one school that I believe it was Niles, that actually they've been doing it for several years, and they decided to change from going to the PC to a Chromebook.
Okay.
Can't you make the assumption that 3 years from now, you're becoming saying Chromebooks is out of date and it's
Sure.
XXY technology anyways?
Sure.
We have to we just have to make the assumption
Right.
we're going with whatever the most current and best fits our plan, with the understanding that 3 years from now,
Right.
it's going to be a different ballgame out there.
And,
We
the-
hope not, because we're
You
going
know,
to
the-
spend $450,000 if we provide them to the students, and if 3 years ago they're out of date, that is not a good choice then. We have to look out farther than, if we think there's a different technology in 3 years, and we think we're going one-to-one with students in 3 years, and we buy them, and they're out of date, we wasted a lot of money.
Right. No,
Well, I think the difference with a Chromebook, though, a Chromebook is just a portal to the applications.
Right.
And I think what we're missing here that they're trying to articulate is the applications live in the cloud. The spreadsheets, the documents, access to curriculum. The Chromebook is just a tool But you don't need the Chromebook. You could actually use your iPad for many of those applications, and it may be that we allow students to pick whatever device they want. Many times it's browser specific. If they have a Mac computer, they could also choose, we're going to use the Google Apps, and they can use their Mac laptop. So really, the Chromebook is just the tool to get to the applications that the district wants to move to.
It's correct. It's strictly just an internet-based portal.
And as a technology team, you can see some of the concerns or some questions voiced that you can use as your facilitating plan in the future, and going to become before this board to ask us for money.
The recent 3 or 4 significant high school districts that have moved to a one-to-one initiative all have gone through the Chromebooks.
Well, let me expand on, are we taking a broad approach to what the best choices are? And again, I compliment you for your report on what you've done, but if we're only looking at a few schools in northern Illinois, you know, maybe there's big, good salesmen for Chromebooks here. Are we considering what the one-to-one platform being used of other areas, California, New York, and see
I've been
do
in
we have some-
discussions on some blogs, and actually talked to a couple schools in Ohio, California.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
You know, and yeah, it's I'm a part of 2 blogs. There's one that's part of Illinois, and then there's one for the entire United States.
Okay.
So it's a very big program
Okay.
throughout the United States.
We also went and researched, one of our site visits last year was to a BYOD, which is a bring your own device.
Right. You
So that the
mentioned
school provided the infrastructure and students, whether they had a smartphone, iPad, Chromebook, laptop.
Mhm.
We even went and did a site visit there to see if that was more of a cost affordable and a way to do this. And what our researchers kept bringing us back to, that it's better to provide either a leasing option through the district or a gifting program through the district, because the more machines you bring in and different interfaces you bring in, the more your IT department eventually has to manage.
Right.
So,
The second, hold on, we give you long, I'd like to ask a few more questions. Gary touched on security, but I was interested in, you talked about having the students have an Ethernet connection, or the staff, and, you know, at our company, we just implemented a plan, we can't even use sticks anymore, unless you get a special one that IT encrypts for you. So how are you addressing the safety and security? You know, Gary asked about them accessing sites they don't have, or loading, you know, information
That's a big broad thing about data
Data,
itself. I
but-
mean, that includes
but-
flash drives.
But how do we have some comfort that we're building in the kind of cyber risk security that somebody can't bring our system down or hack into our system if we're expanding the ability for people to access the system?
We use several different ways. A lot of the stuff is based on your accounts, and so that if you need to access something, you need to log in. And there's different types of encryption, like with our wireless, there's encryption to get on there. Also, we like, for instance, for our wireless, we have one that's not encrypted that people can just hook up into, but we have it in a way where it just goes through our network. It doesn't hit anything on it, any servers or anything like that. It just goes out to the internet.
Okay.
Then we have one that's encrypted, and the one that's encrypted has to go through us, where we haven't told anyone the password, even Kevin doesn't know, so that so that you can have access to files and printers and things like that. With the Chromebook, if you need access to printers, somebody has to assign those to you. In order to get access to files that you put on in the cloud, you have to be assigned certain rights, whether you can just view it or edit it or create.
The last question I would ask, and it's probably more of a question for Kevin, but I've asked this in other ways, is when will you kind of officially decide, or maybe tentatively decide Chromebooks is the method you're going? Because I've asked the question many times. There's one on the bill today. We just bought an iPad for a coach here. If the school's decided that Chromebooks are the way to go, we bought a lot of iPads for different people over the last couple of years. We bought laptops.
Right.
How are we going to set a system up so if this is our way we're going forward, we're going to cut off buying iPads and laptops and whatever else we're buying and going to this Chromebook? And I realize you said there's other alternatives, or are we going to buy a iPad, Chromebook for a teacher that last year we bought an iPad for?
Right, so we have to, I think that's a great question, and that's under the whole, under the infrastructure model in regards to our software and servers and equipment. We provided flexibility to the administration because our administrators doing evaluations on some of the documents that they use work better on a laptop with a tablet format with a stylus. So I think there's going to be a prong approach to where, you know, there'll be a device that's suitable for what the administration needs to accomplish. We need to encourage, get everybody in the classrooms on a Chromebook, and then students. In regards to like some of the iPad purchase, I think you ask a good question in that some of that stuff is in some of the interfaces of the applications they're using with the athletic software. If they don't know if they'll work necessarily with a Chromebook.
Well, that's the thing we have to weigh. If we
Well,
have to
right,
buy
but
two
when I-
pieces of equipment.
Right. What I mean by that is a softball, someone keeping statistics for a softball team, there's a program that's on the iPad that's just touch and you know, where it's not opening up a laptop and being able to sit there for a coach to be able to do that while on the sideline. So, I mean, there's some things that we have to just, there might be a need to where a program might, out of their supply budget, have to still buy an iPad.
Okay.
But I think that's a good question, you know.
And another case might be with special ed, where some of their programs are only on iPad and they require touching for some of the special ed students.
Right.
And that's fair enough, as
Yeah.
long as
We're thinking about it.
considering
Right.
that.
We're
not
trying to-
buying 2 or 3 pieces of equipment for everybody, because we
Sure.
use this for this program, and this one for this program, and that one for that program.
Someone asked a great question this morning because our special ed staff, a lot of them use smart boards.
Okay.
The Chromebook does work through the smart board, but there's a couple programs through the smart technology that don't interface yet with the current version of Chromebook. So that's something, you're absolutely right. There's not going to be, we're going to do the best we can to get to a one approach system, but we have to look at also the needs of each program.
And we've already done a preliminary audit on a lot of the programs that are on our desktops to see where the companies are at with developing for a Chromebook, and some are in development, some are not. So it's going to be an ongoing process.
All right, any other questions?
You know, I think we ought to, we're moving rapidly in technology, and many of us have laptops, many of us have smartphones. So many of us use 2 devices anyway. In the professions, it's not unusual for somebody to have an iPad, a laptop, and a smartphone, and have them all going at the same time at the same meeting, because they do different things, and they fill different purposes. But, you know, it's really excellent what you're doing. You know, you've done excellent work, excited, you really did a lot of investigation into it. And it is where we're going in the professions. We develop resources for professions, and we are moving completely into the cloud, online. Even our development is moving away from paper-based, and we're going into servers. So I really applaud you for the work. It's a big job, especially when you have to transition from a paper-based organization. I only have one question. Your integration with your curriculum. Is the curriculum just web-based, and it really doesn't matter? We're just going to use the Chromebook to get to it on the web?
Certainly, I would.
No, so a couple of things that we're looking into. First of all, we started to create a textbook inventory so we can start to work with the publishers to see exactly which textbooks have online textbooks and make sure that they're supported on the Chromebook. And then the other thing that we're looking at is a learning management system and having teachers pilot that so that it's a common gateway for all students to log into this one website and be able to access all of their courses. And from there you can do blogs, you can do quizzes, you can have all of the documents for your courses. You know, you can have notes from the class on there. So it's a really great resource for students to be able to go to that one spot and be able to, you know, access all of their curriculum materials and really still interact with the curriculum outside of the school day in a much more meaningful way if they're, you know, on a blog and having a discussion with the student and posting back and forth. So that's, you know, some of the things that we're doing with the curriculum, and then we hope by rolling it out to the teachers, you know, that they can continue to expand that. One of the teachers that talked to me today already said that he's been using Google Docs in his classroom for 3 years, and he's an English teacher. And Mr. Dignan said that, you know, none of his students print off papers. They all submit it, they all share it, and then he goes in and he comments, and students comment back and forth. So, that's already happening in small pockets, and we'd like to be able to continue to roll that out and encourage more teachers to do that.
Any other questions?
John,
John, did you have one?
Yes, how did this whole Google thing start? I mean, there were options besides Google, wasn't there, when you, last year?
Because Chromebooks is a Google product.
Right.
True.
Yeah, everything's
Right.
flowing from that.
And the cloud that you're talking about is a Google-controlled environment.
Right.
So we've chosen Google, is your question.
Yeah, how did that
As opposed
happen,
to
and
Apple or,
what were the alternatives?
Well, one thing I think that we need to talk about is that when I first arrived, we had a state-provided email and an office management system for email, calendar,
Yeah.
called IceWarp, and it was significantly out of date. So one of the first tasks that I assigned to Mike before we even really had a technology team was to begin to look at alternatives, whether it was Microsoft Outlook, Novell, come up with different office management software so that our email systems, calendar systems, sharing calendars within the organization, and increasing efficiency. When he did his work on it, he came back with Gmail from Google because it was the most affordable, and it also provided a Google Drive, basically a cloud space for every one of our users with 15 megabytes of storage.
And now it's up to 30.
So it was kind of the bang for the buck, and Google's made a really significant push in education now to challenge Mac, because when I first started this discussion with them, hence the iPad in front of me, I was thinking that, Apple used to be the way to go, but as we started looking more into the high school curriculums and what kids were creating and what they needed to get to, and what's more stored in the cloud and in the internet, that's how it started to become heavy towards Google. And if you guys want to add to that, I hope I didn't discredit what we researched.
And one of the things that, with Google too is that with education, they give us incredible deals they really don't charge us anything for it. The only thing that's required by us is for archiving of emails, but we don't pay for servers, we don't pay for anything for using their products. And a lot of schools, like Kevin had mentioned, that a lot of schools have been going to it. And we had begun to do it with the students. Alicia Duell was heavily involved with it back then too.
So what's in it for Google?
8.9 million.
Just
kidding.
No, we got,
The kids learn to use Google, and when they're
They'll
buying
own-
products
they're
after
gonna
they're out
own-
of college, that's what they're going to buy, because it's what they're used
they're
to.
gonna buy an
And-
Android phone versus an Apple phone.
And they'll
We
own 300
convinced their
million
companies to
individuals
use
in
the
United
business
States.
version of
Yeah.
Gmail, which is not free.
Well,
So the only question on that, since basically the hardware is nothing more than a device to get to the internet.
Right.
In the case of the Microsoft product, you have the Microsoft products on there, the operating system, whatever, but they accept Google, and
Right.
it's a Google operating system. What happens 2 years down the road, Microsoft gets their act together and they have the state-of-the-art system. Will the Chromebook accept in the Microsoft operating system?
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if I
that
can.
Mike's on the Google board, they could tell you.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's where the risk is gonna be, not necessarily hardware, because hardware is gonna be minimal,
Sure.
it's the interface.
But Microsoft would have to develop a whole server. My daughter, who's an engineer, when she bought her last computer, everything is Google in the cloud. And so she just has a Microsoft keyboard and computer and no space to save anything on her device anymore. All my stuff is on a Google Drive, and I can see it. It's on my phone right now. I can see it on all 5 of my computers wherever I'm at. So if Microsoft does something, they're not going to reinvent this cloud or the server, or they would have to come up with all kinds of applications that they're going to give away for free, which Google has done, and I don't know why, but they have done it. But they may come up with a slicker device, and so it won't be a Chromebook. Maybe it's a slicker device, and if it can be as cheap as a Chromebook, then so be it.
It'll be a gold book.
It'd be a gold book, right?
Yeah.
Right. But
We did, Gary had sent,
Okay.
I think Gary sent out an information about the Surface and the affordability. Microsoft was doing a big
Right.
push.
And
back to
giving away
school.
their
Right.
word.
And
giving
we
away
did
Excel
a
and whatever.
significant research into that. and we still felt that we were better with the Chromebooks. I know Mike did an analysis for me on that, because I haven't bought into the Chromebook 100. I use the Google Docs more because everybody around me is. When we come to meetings now, Pam shares her questions with me. When everything has been shared. We don't print off agendas now when we go to meetings. We use a shared calendar that people can see and log into and add things to, and so this web-based stuff is it's helping with our efficiency of operation as well.
So I think for our mindset, we're looking at technology. The device is not as important as how we're going to operate,
And-
how we're going to
Right, and
compute.
thus gets back to my original question about the whole security thing.
Sure.
Right, and
So
a
what
lot of-
happens if
right.
Microsoft 2 years down the road has the best security, can control the data, can monitor that kind of stuff, especially if we're going to be giving hardware out to teachers and to students. We have an obligation to make sure that what is on it, what they send to the cloud, since it's only, or what they're putting in their flash drive,
Right.
we're going to have some sense of responsibility on that.
Right.
And that's the question. I understand the hardware is not the big thing.
Another point that was mentioned, we have some money, and I'm just going to plant the seed. We're talking about a learning management system. Every hospital has one, every professional organization has one, every college has one. They cost money. We are fortunate to have gotten some money. If we're going to get the right one, we will have to spend some money. They are critical to, in this millennium, they are critical to everything we are doing, and that will take a team to investigate the one you want.
We've done some significant
Yeah.
research on learning
We need to
management
know that.
systems. There's a piece that I think Kristen put some bullet points in
It's in there.
this
It's in there.
presentation.
Mhm.
We've even researched some free ones. Niles is using a free one called Moodle. We've also met with the vendor from Blackboard. And we're going to have 2 beta groups, hopefully second semester, that are going to pilot 2 different learning management systems to see what complications they run into. And the goal is that we're going to choose our learning management system by next summer and then pilot it with the teachers for all of next year before we would put the students onto it. Right now, Moodle is free. There's some upgrade that we need to look into in regards to service and support and some things.
But as a board, free is not always your best option. As a board, we need to encourage our staff to do due diligence,
Sure.
look for what you need, and as a board, we need to be ready to spend some money, because the learning management system will drive our curriculum.
It's important.
Okay, so Kristen and Mike, you saw where directionally there's some concerns or questions about. What I'd like to do is probably at the end of the school year or maybe in the summer, coming out and give us a report on how this year went with your beta, with your groups and everything else. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank
Mike,
you.
Great job, great job. Very good. And Mike, you loosened up a little bit, I like that, so.
And I'm buttoning the suit now, Mike.
All right, yeah, you got to button the suit.